They say every human lives one life. Tolstoy lived many. He was a nobleman and a beggar, a sinner and a saint, a soldier covered in blood, and a philosopher searching for God, a family man loved by millions, and a runaway who left everything behind. How can one man become so many people and still write books that change the world forever? Stay with me, because the moment this story begins, you won't be able to leave it until the end. The Boy Born in Silence. On a cold autumn morning in 1828, in a grand estate surrounded by endless forests and silver mist, a child opened his eyes to a world he would one day rewrite. Servants whispered his name like a secret, Lev Nikolaevich Tolstoy, unaware that this fragile newborn would grow up to shape the soul of literature itself. Yasnaya Polyana, his home, was a kingdom of birch trees, snowfall, wooden corridors that smelled of old books and pine. Little Lev wandered through it with curious eyes, touching walls, gazing at portraits of ancestors with powdered wigs and distant eyes. He wasn't just growing, but he was observing. Every voice, every face, every tear and laughter quietly stored itself inside him like seeds waiting for spring. Life was gentle at first. Warm hands, kind faces, fairy tales near the fireplace. But childhood can be cruel when love leaves early. Lev lost his mother when he was only 2. He never knew her voice, only the faint perfume of memory others described to him. Years later, he would write mothers with such tenderness, perhaps to recreate the one he barely met. When he was 9, his father died too. The house grew quieter. Huge rooms felt empty, echoing like a cathedral after prayer. 4 children stood in the middle of wealth, but felt orphaned in their hearts. Relatives raised them, good people, but no one could replace a parent's shadow. Lev began escaping into thought. Some children run to play. Lev ran inward. He questioned everything. Why people die, why suffering exists, why hearts break. He scribbled notes, attempted stories, studied languages not because he had to, but because he needed answers. He was still a boy, yet already a thinker. At university, he tried to become someone society expected, polished, disciplined, respectable. But lectures tasted dry. Life outside was louder. Cards on tables, smoke-filled rooms, heated debates, temptation. He drifted into gambling, burning money the way people burn time. Fast, foolish, believing more will return. Sometimes he won, more often he lost. Walks home became heavy, his coat thin against the Moscow wind, pockets lighter with each mistake, guilt following like a shadow. In his diary, he wrote, "I know what is right, yet I do what is wrong." He was not proud. He was hungry. Hungry for meaning, for purpose, for something bigger than himself. And then he chose war. The army was mud, blood, frozen fingers gripping rifles, the smell of gunpowder replacing the scent of childhood gardens. Lev witnessed men fall like cut grass, silently, suddenly. Nights were long. Fear slept beside him like a silent companion. But when others closed their eyes, he opened his notebook. Under dim candlelight, While snow scratched against the tent like fingernails of winter, he wrote, "Not polished stories, raw truth, fear, courage, humanity stripped to its bones." Those pages returned to St. Petersburg like thunder. Readers felt the cold, the pain, the honesty. Publishers wanted more. Young writers followed his footsteps the way sailors follow stars. But fame is a strange visitor, warm at first, then heavy. People praised him, yet he doubted himself. Applause filled rooms, emptiness filled nights. He looked in the mirror and felt two men staring back. One admired, one uncertain. To escape the noise inside his mind, he traveled through Europe. In Paris, he saw luxury clash with misery, golden cafes beside starving workers. Contrast carved itself into him, and one day he watched a public execution, a blade falling, a life ending, a scream swallowed by silence. He returned to his room pale as snow and wrote with trembling hands, "No human should kill another. Never." A belief that would one day inspire Gandhi, though neither of them knew it yet. He came back to Russia changed, like a river returning deeper than it left. And then love arrived. Her name was Sonia Bears. Bright eyes, sharp mind, a calm voice that could soften the storms inside him. She admired his brilliance, he admired her clarity. Their walks felt like chapters, their conversations like music. Before they married, Lev handed her his diaries. Every sin, every confession, every piece of darkness. She read them all, tears marking the pages. He didn't defend himself. Truth, naked and painful, stood between them like a test. She stayed. And together they began a life in Yasnaya Poliana, the same estate where a lonely child once searched for meaning. But now he returned not as a lost boy, but as a writer, ready to create something vast. He woke before sunrise, drank tea slowly, breathed the morning air of fields stretching to the horizon, and wrote, hour after hour. Characters grew like trees. Stories breathed. His world expanded beyond walls and seasons. And then, one morning, he sat at his desk with an idea larger than anything he had faced. A story not about one person, but about nations. About war and peace, love and death, power and destiny. About life itself. He sharpened his pen. Snow fell outside like white ash. The first page waited. The book that would shake the world was beginning. War and Peace. Where it all began. But before Leo Tolstoy became a legendary writer, before millions of people read his books, before university students all over the world studied his philosophy and ideas, he was simply a child, born into a noble Russian family in 1828, far away from big cities, in a beautiful family estate named Yasnaya Poliana. The estate was wide and green, filled with forests, long paths, and quiet lakes. Servants walked through long hallways, polished furniture, and carried trays of tea while children's laughter echoed across the garden. From the outside, everything looked perfect, almost like a dream. But Leo's early life was touched by sadness from the very beginning. His mother died when he was only 2. His father followed a few years later. The Tolstoy children suddenly became orphans. These losses didn't just change his life, they shaped his soul. The questions that later made him a philosopher and writer were born from this pain. Even as a boy, he wondered why life could be so beautiful and cruel at the same time. Leo was raised by loving relatives who tried to keep the house warm with kindness, stories, and music. But there were empty spaces in the home, and even bigger empty spaces in Leo's heart. Sometimes he would sit quietly by a window, watching the wind move through the trees, as if searching for the mother he could not remember and the father he lost too soon. Yet childhood was not only sorrow, it was also discovery. He explored the gardens, ran through the fields with his brothers, climbed trees, listened to peasants sing folk songs, and secretly observed the simple life outside the walls of privilege. He saw wealth inside the house, but real life outside. This contrast would later become one of the foundations of his writing. When he learned to read, something changed. Books opened doors inside his mind. French stories, religious texts, history, poetry. He devoured them slowly, curiously, sometimes with difficulty, but always with passion. He wasn't a brilliant student at first. Teachers often said he was distracted, lost in thoughts, and they were right. Leo's mind loved to wander to places far beyond classrooms. Sometimes he sat late at night writing in a notebook, describing his thoughts and daily events, not knowing these simple lines were the first small steps toward greatness. He didn't know it yet, but the world was preparing him. Life was shaping him. Pain was teaching him. Books were calling him. The boy in Yasnaya Polyana had no idea that one day he would change literature forever. The young Leo, a mind too wild for classrooms. As Leo grew older, Yasnaya Polyana became more than a home. It became a world of questions, curiosity, and restless thoughts. He was a teenager now, with sharp eyes and a mind that never seemed to stop. He could spend hours watching people, noticing small things others ignored. The way a peasant laughed with missing teeth, the tired look in a servant's eyes after a long day, the softness in his aunt's voice when she spoke about his mother. He absorbed life like a sponge. At 16, Leo and his brothers moved to Kazan to study. It was the first time he left the wide fields and quiet trees behind. The city felt loud, busy, and confusing. Carriages on cobblestones, people selling bread, students arguing in cafes. Everything was different, fast, alive. Leo entered university, first studying Oriental languages, later switching to law. Everyone expected him to become a successful nobleman or a government official. But Leo had a problem. He didn't like being told what to do. Classes bored him, rules bothered him. Professors complained that he lacked discipline. Friends said he was brilliant but lazy. And maybe they were right. Leo preferred life to lectures. He spent long nights reading philosophy instead of textbooks. He played cards, attended parties, laughed loudly, fell in love quickly, and with equal speed lost interest. He wrote in his diary that he felt two people inside him, one wanting pleasure and comfort, the other searching for meaning and goodness. This inner conflict became the engine of his future genius. Sometimes he swore to change his life, study hard, follow moral rules, be better. But days later, he would return to music, dancing, wine, and conversations that lasted until sunrise. He wanted everything at once: freedom, happiness, greatness. But underneath the fun, a seed was growing: the desire to understand life deeply. One evening, after a tiring day of lectures he hadn't listened to, Leo walked alone through the city streets. Snow fell slowly, covering the lamps and rooftops with silver. A group of poor peasants were huddled together for warmth, shivering. They wore thin coats, their fingers red, their eyes tired. Leo stopped. He watched. He had warm gloves. They had none. He could go home to tea and fire. They could not. That moment hit him hard. It was the first time he truly felt the distance between privilege and suffering. He returned to his room and wrote for hours in his journal. He questioned society, class, wealth. Why should some have everything while others had almost nothing? He didn't have answers yet, but he was searching. Searching like someone who knew life was much larger than what he saw. University continued, but Leo's interest disappeared more and more each day. Finally, he made a bold decision. One very few expected. He left. Not because he wasn't capable, but because he felt something bigger calling him, something he couldn't name yet. His relatives worried. His teachers were disappointed. His friends were shocked. But Leo followed the voice inside him, the one that pushed him toward freedom, toward experience, toward life itself. He returned to Yasnaya Poliana, not as a child, but as a young man burning with ambition and doubt. He wanted to become better. He wanted to improve himself, shape his mind, and maybe, just maybe, find greatness. He began setting strict rules for self-improvement. Wake up early, work hard, read more. No gambling, no parties. He wrote goals every day like a coach training himself. But discipline was a fierce enemy, and Leo lost the fight many times. Still, he continued, step by step, fall and rise. He didn't know it yet, but the journey that would make him a writer was quietly beginning. War, fire, and the birth of a writer. Back at Yasnaya Poliana, Leo tried to rebuild himself. He wanted to be disciplined, wise, productive. Every morning he promised to work harder, to read more, to stop wasting time. But the human heart is complicated, especially Leo's. Some days he woke before sunrise, walked in the cold garden, breathed deeply, and felt strong. Other days he slept late, played cards, visited friends, and laughed until midnight. He was fighting with himself, and no side was winning. Then, in 1851, something unexpected happened. His older brother Nikolai came home from the Caucasus, wearing a military uniform, sunburned, stronger, full of stories about war, mountains, and danger. To Leo, he looked like a hero from a novel. Nikolai spoke of wild landscapes, brave soldiers, horse hooves beating the earth like drums, and nights filled with stars and fear. Leo listened silently, eyes wide, heart burning. There was adventure out there, beyond books, beyond gardens, beyond the safe walls of Yasnaya Poliana. A few weeks later, Leo made a decision that would change everything. He joined the army. It was not a gentle decision. Family worried, friends doubted, but Leo wanted reality. He wanted life raw and unfiltered, life that could break him or make him stronger. The Caucasus welcomed him with dust, gunpowder, cold winds, and mountains so tall they cut the sky. Camps smelled of sweat, horses, and metal. Soldiers laughed loudly, cursed loudly, lived loudly. It was a different world. Hard, dirty, dangerous. And Leo loved it. During quiet nights, he wrote about soldiers playing cards under dim lamps. He wrote about fear before battle, about death, about courage. He wrote everything he saw, not as a nobleman above others, but as a human among humans. His first published work, childhood, came from these moments of reflection. Readers loved it, critics admired it. A new voice appeared in Russian literature, fresh, honest, powerful. Leo felt something inside him open, like a door he had been knocking on for years finally unlocked. He kept writing. Stories like the Cossacks were born from fire and dust. His name began to spread in literary circles. People whispered, "There is a young writer with great talent." But the battlefield was not finished with him yet. Soon after, Leo was sent to Sevastopol, a city under siege during the Crimean War. Cannons thundered, smoke covered the sky, mud mixed with blood. Soldiers died next to friends, sometimes silently, sometimes screaming. The world became real, painfully, terrifyingly real. Leo saw death closely for the first time, not in books, not in imagination, in front of him. He watched a young soldier cry for his mother as he bled. He carried messages under fire, feeling bullets fly past his head. He felt fear, not heroic, but human fear, the kind that shakes bones. At night, he wrote again. He turned war into words, words sharp like steel, honest like confession. His Sevastopol sketches shocked readers. They did not glorify war, they exposed it. No romantic heroes, no shining glory. Just the truth. Fear, courage, friendship, loss. Russia noticed him. Then Europe noticed him. The world was beginning to see his power. Yet inside Leo, another storm was forming. He questioned everything: war, society, government, privilege, even himself. Fame brought pride, but also emptiness. Success brought applause, but also loneliness. When the war ended, Leo left the army. He was no longer the uncertain young student. He was a writer now, brilliant, wounded, searching. He returned to Yasnaya Polyana with new eyes. The estate seemed calmer, quieter than before. Children played in the yard, peasants worked in the fields, and birds sang freely above them. Life continued as if war had been a nightmare only he remembered. But Leo carried the war inside him, not as scars on the body, but as marks on the soul. He sat at his desk again. The world expected more books. Leo expected more from life. This was only the beginning. Love, fame, and the golden years of creation. The war had changed Leo forever. He returned home stronger, wiser, but also more restless. Conflict lived inside him. Violence he had seen, death he had felt, and the strange silence that followed when battles end, but memories do not. Yet life at Yasnaya Poliana began slowly mending him. He walked more, read more, and wrote more. The estate felt peaceful again. Horses grazing quietly, trees whispering in the wind, fields stretching like oceans of green. Leo often stood on the balcony at sunrise, watching the sky change colors. He felt something growing inside him. Not fear, not sadness, but creation. His writing matured. His voice became deeper, more honest. People didn't just read him, they felt him. Every sentence cut through the heart like truth. Soon the literary world knew his name well. Nobles invited him to salons. Students admired him. Writers respected him. But even while fame was rising like a bright star above his head, Leo felt incomplete. He wanted connection, not with crowds, but with one person. Someone to share mornings and nights with. Someone who could read his soul. And then he met Sofia Andreevna Bers, a young woman with intelligent eyes, calm voice, and a heart full of warmth. Sofia admired Leo's books long before she knew the man behind them. When they spoke for the first time, something gentle sparked between them, like two melodies finding harmony. Their courtship was short, intense, passionate. Leo gave her his diaries to read, a bold move. In those pages, Sofia saw every side of him: ambition, doubt, mistakes, dreams, weaknesses. Most people would have been frightened by such honesty. But Sofia stayed. They married in 1862, and life suddenly changed color. Their home filled with laughter, children's footsteps, the sound of pens on paper, pages turning, and conversations late into the night. Sophia copied his manuscripts by hand, supported his writing tirelessly, protected him from distractions, and became his anchor. Leo found stability in her presence, someone who believed in him not because he was famous, but because she understood him. And with love came creation, powerful, unstoppable creation. In this golden period, Leo wrote two giants of world literature, two mountains no one could climb after him: War and Peace, Anna Karenina. Books not just read, but lived, felt, remembered. He wrote scenes of war with the breath of a soldier who had been there, who had seen smoke and tasted fear. He wrote love, betrayal, forgiveness, family, history, philosophy. Pages grew like forests, deep, complex, alive. Sophia copied them word by word, night after night, sometimes rewriting whole manuscripts in candlelight, her eyes burning with fatigue, but her heart proud. When War and Peace was finally finished, the world stopped to look. People read it in salons, in trains, in small apartments. Critics called it a masterpiece. It was more than a novel. It was a universe of characters, emotions, and life itself. Years later, Anna Karenina came, darker and more psychological, exploring love and pain, society and morality. Readers cried, argued, debated. Leo had touched something deep inside human nature. He was not just a writer anymore, he was a force, a mountain, a legend forming in real time. But success brings weight, fame brings expectations. And Leo's soul, always searching, never satisfied, began to tremble again. In the midst of wealth and recognition, surrounded by family, respect, and comfort, Leo felt a new emptiness growing quietly like a shadow at the edge of a bright room. He began asking himself dangerous questions. Why do I write? What is happiness? Why am I alive? He walked through forests for hours alone, sat by the pond in silence, read religious texts intensely, talked with peasants, shared meals with them, listened to their worries and joys. He noticed something. They had less but laughed more. They sang. They believed. They lived simply. Leo started to feel that his own life, full of luxury and privilege, was somehow further from truth. Something inside him was changing again. The golden years of creativity were shining, but beyond the golden light, a storm was slowly gathering. The storm within, a search for meaning. Success surrounded Leo like sunlight. Books sold everywhere. People bowed when he entered a room. Young writers dreamed of shaking his hand. At night, elegant guests filled the halls. Glasses touched, music played, and conversation sparkled like wine. But deep inside, Leo felt darkness. He was almost 50 now. His shelves were full of books he had written, his study room full of polished honors. And yet his heart felt strangely hollow. Every achievement tasted sweet at first, but quickly turned to dust. Fame did not fill the emptiness. Wealth did not bring peace. Applause sounded loud, but happiness sounded distant. He wrote in his diary, "I am successful, admired, wealthy, but why am I alive? What is the purpose of life?" These questions grew louder each day. Sometimes he woke at night unable to breathe, feeling a wave of fear. Fear of death. Fear of meaninglessness. He imagined the day he would no longer exist, and panic filled him. He walked through the house late at night while everyone slept, candle trembling in his hand, shadows following him on the walls. During mornings, he watched peasants working in the fields. Their hands were rough, faces burned by sun, clothes simple. Yet they laughed, they prayed, they slept easily. Why were they at peace while he, a man with so much, could not rest? Something inside him cracked open. He began studying religion, reading the Bible not like literature, but like a lost traveler searching for direction. He met spiritual thinkers, talked with monks, questioned priests. He explored different philosophies: Christianity, Buddhism, nonviolence, moral simplicity. Everywhere he searched, he found pieces of truth, but never the whole. Then one day, while walking alone through the snow-covered fields of Yasnaya Polyana, he stopped suddenly. The world around him was white and silent. His breath floated in the cold air, and a realization touched him gently like a hand on the shoulder. Life must be lived with love, humility, and service, not with pride and luxury. This moment did not solve everything, but it opened a new path. Leo began to change. He simplified his lifestyle, gave away money, dressed in plain clothes like peasants, worked beside them cutting wood, planting crops, sharing their bread. Visitors were shocked. The great Tolstoy digging potatoes? But Leo smiled. He finally felt close to something real. His ideas became revolutionary, dangerous even. He criticized the church for its wealth and distance from true spirituality. He opposed violence and war, preaching peace and moral purity. He wrote books on ethics, education, love, and the meaning of life. Many admired him, many attacked him. The church eventually excommunicated him. But Tolstoy no longer cared about approval. He cared about truth. Friends worried he was changing too much. His fame turned into a storm of controversy. And at home, a new pain appeared. Not from outside, but from the heart of the place he loved most. His marriage, once full of warmth, began to fracture. Sophia loved Leo deeply, but she could not understand this new version of him. The man who wanted to give away their wealth, their land, even the copyright to his books. She had spent years copying his manuscripts, raising their many children, building their life. Now Leo seemed ready to erase it all for spiritual purity. Arguments grew. Nights turned cold. Two hearts that once beat together slowly drifted apart. Leo walked the garden in silence. Sophia cried alone in her room. Both loved each other, but love wasn't enough anymore. The crisis was no longer just spiritual, it was personal, painful, human. And the world watched, breath held, as the greatest writer of Russia walked deeper into a journey that would lead to his final chapter. A chapter no one could have predicted. The final journey. A heart too heavy for home. Years passed. Leo grew older, his beard longer, his walk slower, his eyes deeper. But inside his spirit, a young flame still burned, bright and restless. The world continued to admire him. Pilgrims came from across Russia just to touch his hand, to hear a few words of wisdom from the great Tolstoy. Students sat on the porch for hours, waiting to ask questions about life. Some cried when he spoke. Some felt changed forever. But while the world loved him, his own home had become a battlefield. Sophia struggled with Leo's new ideals. She could not accept giving away property and income with many children still needing support. Leo wanted simplicity. She wanted security. He wanted spiritual poverty, and while she wanted to protect their family. Neither was wrong. Both hurt, both loved, both suffered. Conversations became arguments. Arguments became silence. Silence became distance. Sometimes at night, Leo walked alone in the corridor, hearing Sophia's quiet sobs behind the bedroom door. He pressed his hand against the wood, but didn't enter. He didn't know how to fix the wound between them. The man who once understood the world could no longer understand his own home. One autumn evening at 82 years old, Leo sat by his desk, candle flickering, shadows trembling like memories. He wrote a final note, just a few soft, tired lines. I must leave. I cannot live like this any longer. I want peace. a simple life. Before dawn, while the house still slept, he quietly packed a few things: a coat, a walking stick, a notebook. He kissed the sleeping children on their heads. He looked once more at Sophia, who rested unaware, moonlight touching her silver hair. And with heavy steps, he left the place he had loved all his life. The great Tolstoy, the man whose words shook the world, became a traveler on the road like any ordinary soul. He rode a train, sitting among strangers. Rain tapped against the windows. Fields passed by in gray silence. Leo stared outside, eyes full of memories. War, youth, love, books, children, arguments, fame. Life itself flowing behind him like scenery. His journey was short but intense. People recognized him at stations, shocked, confused, some crying, some begging him to return home. But Leo walked forward like someone searching for peace at the end of a long river. Days passed, he became ill. A cold that turned to fever, a cough that grew painful. He stopped at a small railway station called Ostapovo, too weak to travel further. Locals offered him a simple room in the station master's house. A small bed, one window, the sound of trains coming and going like the heartbeat of the world. Doctors arrived. Family rushed. Newspapers wrote headlines. Outside the house, crowds waited in silence, hoping for a miracle. Inside, everything was quiet, just breathing, whispers, and time slowly fading. Sophia finally came, breathless from crying, desperate to see him. She asked to enter his room. Doctors hesitated. Leo was extremely weak, but she begged. After years of conflict, she only wanted one more moment, one more look, one more chance to say, "I love you," without anger between them. She stood outside the door, heart shaking, hand on the knob. But Leo, half conscious, asked for peace. He could not face more pain, more memory, more storm. Sophia fell to her knees, sobbing as the man she loved slipped further away. Morning of November 7th, 1910. The sky was pale, almost white. A slow, tired breath escaped Leo's chest and did not return. The world lost a writer. Russia lost a voice. Humanity lost a soul that searched endlessly for truth. But in that small, silent room, with trains whispering outside and snow beginning to fall, one thing became clear. Tolstoy's body died. His words did not. His questions did not. His light remained. The last years, a storm, inside, a legend. Tolstoy was now one of the most famous writers in the world. His books were read not only in Russia but across Europe, Asia, and America. Students quoted him, newspapers wrote about him, and visitors arrived every day just to shake his hand. Fame surrounded him like a crown, dazzling, heavy, and impossible to ignore. But inside, Leo Tolstoy felt something different. A quiet voice deep in his soul kept asking him questions. What is the meaning of life? Why are people suffering? How can I live in a world full of injustice while I own lands and servants? The man who had written about kings and soldiers now looked at his own home with new eyes. He saw peasants working on his fields, struggling to feed their children while he lived in comfort. A storm began inside him, not a storm of anger, but of awakening. He gave away royalties, money, lands. His family was shocked, even frightened. Sophia, his wife, who had stood beside him through wars of creativity and family, could not understand why her husband wanted to live like a poor man. She protected their children's rights fiercely. They argued often, days of silence, nights of tears. Love was there, deep and old, but the road between them was no longer smooth. Fame had joined their marriage like a third presence, heavy, intrusive, always watching. Tolstoy's heart longed for simplicity. He dressed in peasant clothes. He learned to farm with his own hands. He slept on a hard bed, ate simple bread, walked through fields with children from nearby villages. People began to call him not just a writer, but a prophet, a saint, a voice of conscience. Yet Leo never saw himself that way. He felt small, a man still searching. The government watched him carefully. His ideas about peace, equality, and nonviolence spread fast. Some feared his influence. His words inspired ordinary people to think, to question, to dream of a different world. This power, soft and silent, was stronger than guns. But the tension at home grew like an invisible sickness. As Tolstoy became more spiritual, Sophia felt more abandoned. She read his diaries and found doubts about their marriage. Her heart broke again and again. Love was still there, but now mixed with pain, memory, and exhaustion. Then came the night that changed everything. At the age of 82, tired of arguments and fame, Tolstoy quietly packed a few clothes and left his home before sunrise. No servants, no celebration, just an old man walking away from the world he had built. He wanted peace. He wanted silence. He wanted to die as simply as a farmer, not as a monument. He took a train south, hoping to reach a small monastery. Cold wind entered through the train windows. Tolstoy, wrapped in his coat, looked at forests rushing by. The same forest he played in as a child. Life was a circle returning to its beginning, but his health, fragile and worn, could not fight the cold. At a stopover station, he collapsed with fever. A small room was turned into his sickbed. Doctors came, reporters gathered outside, the world held its breath. For 7 days he lay there, pale, quiet, peaceful. His family arrived. Sophia stood at his bedside, holding his hand, her eyes red with memories of love, fights, children, books, years. He opened his eyes one last time, not with anger, not with regret, but with soft acceptance. On November 20th, 1910, Leo Tolstoy closed his eyes forever. No music, no grand funeral, just snow falling softly outside the window, as if the world itself was turning another page. But his words did not die. They became rivers flowing through time. The breath that never ends. Tolstoy's body left the world, but his words, they stayed. Like footsteps that never fade, like a candle that keeps burning long after the hand is gone. When the world learned that Leo Tolstoy had died, crowds stood in silence, not in shock, but in reverence. Because deep inside everyone knew a giant had walked among them. He was not remembered for fame, nor wealth, nor the luxury he once had. He was remembered for something far greater. He made people feel. He made people think. He made people human. Generations passed. Empires fell. Borders changed. Wars burned and ended. But his books remained like living hearts, turning every page into a mirror. Who are you? What do you value? What is worth your short time on this earth? Somewhere right now, a young reader opens War and Peace for the first time. Their eyes widen. The world grows bigger. Their soul catches fire. Somewhere, someone broken and lost reads Anna Karenina and realizes pain can be understood, that love can be tragic and beautiful at the same time. Somewhere, a dreamer hears Tolstoy's name and discovers courage they didn't know lived inside them. You see, death took Tolstoy's breath, but not his voice, not his truth, not his light. Because real immortality is not living forever. It's making others live differently. And now we stand at the end of his story, but not the end of our journey. Close your eyes for a moment. Feel it. The weight of a century. The echo of a life. The message left for us like a whisper in the wind. Simplify. Love deeply. Seek truth without fear. And when in doubt, write your own chapter. You watching this right now. You are not just an audience. You are a witness, a carrier of the flame. Take what touched you. Carry it out there, into your days, your choices, your voice. Because the world still needs people who think, who feel, who care. People like Tolstoy, people like you. Thank you for staying until this final heartbeat of the story. If this journey moved your soul even a little, stay with us. More lives, more legends, more stories await you here. Not goodbye, just the turning of a page. This was Leo Tolstoy, a man who searched for truth and left light behind. A life that echoes beyond time. If you reach this moment, you didn't just watch a video, you walked through a lifetime. You felt love, war, peace, doubt, and hope. You traveled with Tolstoy, from birth to death, from glory to truth, and now it's your turn. If this story touched something inside you, your heart, your mind, your dreams, don't let it end here. Subscribe. Stay with us. Join this journey of stories, minds, legends. Because next time, another life will open like a door. Another soul will speak. Another story might change you again. So, like this video, share it with someone who needs it and tell us in the comments, what part of Tolstoy's life will you remember? And what truth will you carry forward? Your voice matters here. You are part of this story now. See you in the next one. A new legend awaits.